Okay, so many of you probably are more skilled at even this lesson than what I would be. Because when I look around, it's kind of like old home week. Not a lot of people. But if you don't, know, ma'am, I'm Randall Coffman. I've spent about 35 years in public ed. I'm now at Work Ready downtown at the corner of Main and Broadway. I'm the project director for a job skills training place for underemployed and unemployed. And we work with soft skills, interview skills. We do applications, resumes, cover letter type things. We have a 30-hour program where they invest in themselves. And so what I'm going to bring today is things that many of you probably already know, but things that you for something that you can go back and help someone. Because many of you are probably mentors for others in your current roles. And the idea here is what they were telling me in this in today's lesson was going to be, or if they want to talk about classroom. I feel like I was an excellent classroom. Okay, but that did not come natural. That was something that was learned. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about how I went through my process of learning, what's important, and I'm going to give you a reading list if you want one. Some things that I've read and that I continue to read even to this day. And I'm no longer in the public ed classroom. Now I'm in a classroom with adults. And so I, as the project director down there, we'll have anywhere from 10 to 20, 25 people come through our program. We have a 1-week initial training each month. And our goal for Altus and the surrounding area, we've got 60-mile radius, so we do 5 counties. And we're one of 22 sites across the state of Oklahoma that do this. I'm going to try to put that on the back burner for a minute and go back to my public ed days, because I think that there were some instrumental things that happened in my career that helped to shape who I became. So just real quick, you know, all of us in the room have degrees. I've got degrees and degrees and degrees, and it's not to pat myself on the back. It was something that I wanted at the moment, and that's what I worked for. I went to Mississippi State to study weather, climate meteorology. I was interested at the time. I was working for the University of Oklahoma. In the summer, I was training teachers. I was on a group of people called the Storm Team. We traveled the state teaching teachers about weather, how to put it in the classroom, how to look at radar, how to look at satellites. And so I got interested in that. I spent from 94 to 09 working with the University of Oklahoma through the Mesonet program. Some of you may know what the Mesonet is. It's a joint mechanism between Oklahoma State and OU for weather automated delivery across the state. That's really what it is. Okay. So I got a master's degree in geoscience because it was the closest thing that I could do to meteorology and not have to take calculus. Okay. So that is that's the reason that I went that route. Many, I would say 3 out of every 4 TV meteorologists on the TV, not in Oklahoma because Oklahoma's unique, but around the country come from Mississippi State because they have a broadcast meteorology program that's specific for them. But they turn tons of TV meteorologists out. It's just one of their niches that they have. And I had a great mentor there. Dr. Brown was my teacher. I got to go on a storm chase in the Great Plains. My capstone project for that master's was 2 weeks chasing storms with my PhD mentor. We traveled chasing tornadoes and hailstorms and all over the place, and it was some of the most exceptional time I had with studying people in that field. So it was really neat to do that. Moved to Altus, 07. My wife took the job at the hospital. She is the director of rehabilitation. And so we came in 07, brought our kids, had 2 kids at the time, or still have 2 kids, but now I have grandkids. Anyway, I had 2 kids that we brought with us. Aubrey was little, and Amanda was like 4 years old and came into the 4-year-old or kindergarten program. So we've been here. Those kids have come completely throughout us. So I taught school, taught everything in the science department. So the only thing I didn't teach was physics because I just really couldn't stand it a lot. You know, physics is one of those that the counselors that are in the room know exactly what I'm talking about. Finding somebody that can teach physics is an issue because a lot of people may enjoy it, but they don't like teaching it, or they like teaching it, but they're not certified. So, but anyway, talk just about everything in the high school. Peyton was in my classroom. It's neat to see a lot of the kids that I run into now that are grown into college. They have kids of their own. But the fact is, I did that from 07 through 18. And I was really contemplating retiring from public ed then, because it wasn't that I was burned out. I'm always at a point in my life where I want a new challenge. And at the moment, the classroom wasn't challenging. Everything worked like it's supposed to. Everything was fine, and I wanted to continue to learn. And then Mr. Warvis called me, and Mr. Ware had moved to the superintendent job, and he called me and he said, "Would you consider this?" And to be quite honest, I considered it in 2006 when Coach Root came, because my name was in the hat for that then. But it wasn't that I would have gotten it. This is different administration, a different situation. And I was a younger person. I've learned a lot in those days. But the situation was, Dr. Hottie called me and said, if you get this job, you've got to come in January. And I said, I will not leave my students. I have testable students in the 8th grade science area, and I will not leave my students. I'll come April 14th, the day after they test. And he said, well, we would have to have you in January because we're trying to make this transition. I said, pull my name out. But it's really funny how things work, because in 2018, Mr. Warvis calls me and said, will you consider this? Thought really hard about it, talked to my kids about it, prayed a little bit about it. Then an old boy called me named Nick Williams. And he said, Randall, you'd be excellent at this because you are even keeled. And I always describe myself as a duck on a pond. I'm cool on the surface, but paddling like crazy to stay afloat. Nobody sees that part. But I'm kind of the fly by my seat of my pants kind of person. So that's how I'm going to introduce myself today in classroom management, because that did not come naturally. That was a learned mechanism. When I started teaching in Hobart, I was scared to death. My best example of a teacher was Mr. Sparks at Mangum, and he would stand up front of the class and he'd lecture to us. We'd do some activities, and he'd walk out the door because some kid needed licks, and he was the assistant principal also. and that was it. I did have one other guy, you might know him. Glenn Harden was one of our science teachers, and Mr. Harden, he was one of these that would give you the project, walk over and sit and read the paper. You're supposed to figure it out. He's a science teacher. But that really did start my inquiry based in my science side, because then you begin to learn how to problem solve. And it makes one, if you're not used to it, it makes you so uncomfortable. And so what we find today is, and I know that you guys all, and I don't want to waste time, I want you to glean some things from this so that you can go back and help people. But the thing was, it's a growing process. And I think all of you are aware, you're all veteran teachers, or you're in other fields now. But the fact is, all of us can glean something from someone, whether it's a positive or a negative. We can glean things from people. And so hopefully today you'll get to catch a couple of things that maybe it would remind you, so you can go back and share this with a younger teacher, or maybe an experienced teacher that's not very good at classroom management. Because we all know that happens. And I'm going to keep my tennis shoes on if that's okay, because I have plantar fasciitis on this foot and I'm limping around today. So anyway, these are way more comfortable than put my dress shoes on. But classroom management is important, isn't it? Okay? Teachers are who run the school. Now, we always say that the secretary is the one that knows the most about what's going on, right? But let's think about this. Let's be real clear-cut about it. Who stays from year to year? Teachers stay year to year. So if you have good school, or good teachers, you have good school. Because they're the ones that remain behind. Kids move on. They move on to the next teacher, the next grade, they graduate, they do all those things. But the one thing that stays the same is the teachers. And so if we have poor teachers in the classroom with classroom management, they stay. So every year that gets replicated. And so for classroom management, it's very important that we as administrators or teachers or mentors, that we teach people correct ways to do it in a loving manner so that they can learn. And I've talked next door to people that were not very good at it. I think they made great strides while they were next door to me, but I still didn't make that huge difference in their career because they weren't quite willing to buy out and sell what they had and come into what I want. Some of that might be fear. So classroom management, where does it begin? Okay. I guess I need to ask you this question because y'all all have relatively different job roles, but what's expected out of you and your role? Okay. What do you expect out of your students? Expectations are big, right? Because we know that we're always taught to have high expectations for your students. Why do we ask teachers to have high expectations? Because we want everybody to rise, right? Well, I'm here to tell you, and this is something that came to me years ago, was I read a book by Todd Whitaker, and he talks about kids deserve you 10 out of 10 days. Okay? They deserve your effort 10 out of 10 days. Are you going to go to class and be a 10 out of 10 person? Probably not. I'm not. Some days might be a 9-day, right? Some days, hopefully not a 7 or 6 or 5. But 10 out of 10 days, they would like to have 10 in their classroom. And as administrators or mentors or teachers, you want to be the 10 out of 10 every day. Sometimes things happen at home, right? Changes your output whenever you come to class. It drains your energy. Something happened, and now you are less than a 10. Students are very forgiving. They're just like children at home. As parents, we mess up. Sometimes when we mess up, we have to go and apologize because we just messed that up. But kids are very forgiving because when you do love them deep down, and you love the kids in your classroom deep down, they know you're going to mess up and they're okay with it. They don't expect perfection, but they do want you to work towards perfection. And that's what all of us want to do. And then what does your administration expect of you? Okay? I would offer up the fact that your administration needs to be walking in your classrooms. They need to mentor what they want done. And this is not picking on any administrators. This is just saying, if they're the example, they know what they want their school to look like. And so if administrators are kind to students, they talk to students, they interact with students, they need to go in those classrooms, especially the classrooms that are not working well, and not chastise the teacher about what they're not doing, but model it so that the teacher soaks that up. That's what my administrator wants from me. So I know what you think is expected of you, but what's really expected. Okay? Once you come to school, we want you to do your job. We want no drama, and we want kids to feel safe. That's really what it's about, right? And so classroom management lends itself to that right there. First thing is you need clear expectations. I met my kids at the door. Sometimes it's high five, sometimes it's fist bump. Sometimes you're just walking around, talking in the hallway, and they see you. But this is something that I know we're 9 weeks almost into school. But this is something that people need to understand, that the first day, the first week, the first 2 weeks of school is so important. Because that's where you establish your expectations. You establish that connectivity. Have you ever had a kid in your class that behaved really, really well in somebody else's class they sucked in? They just were terrible? Bet. What's the difference? It's not the material. It's the person that they're interacting with. They like you. They like getting along with you. You are the difference. And so classroom management is based on that interaction that you have with your students. That day-to-day. So that they know that they can feel safe in that room. And here's another thing, and this is something that I think Peyton probably could reiterate on. Nobody in my classroom knew. They all thought they were the favorite.
No, it was really good.
Yeah.
It was really was.
And Peyton will say that she was the favorite. And I wouldn't disagree with her when I see her at Walmart and she said, "Oh, I was your favorite." You betcha. But if I made it so safe for them to connect with me, they felt like they were the favorite, I did that big part of this classroom management. Because now they will do what I ask them to do. They don't act out. They don't talk back. because they understand, oh, there's this relationship. He thinks I'm the favorite. I need to uphold that standard because if I'm the favorite, I don't want to fall out of grace, right? I want to be the favorite. But you have to work on that. So clear expectations. Rules are rules. I'm gonna tell you, whenever I started, I had a list of 10 rules or something on the wall. When I finished my career, 3. You know? Why? Because I learned through my years and years of experience and gained some wisdom. It's not the rules, it was me. How I interacted with those people, how I interacted with those students day to day. And when I was having a bad day, I didn't mistreat that kid. I didn't use sarcasm. I didn't yell at that kid because he was up out of his seat for the 9th time. You know? And I can be real honest in saying this. I got kids that thought they were the favorite, that they were on my list. And you know which list I'm talking about. But they never knew they were on my list. And these are the kids that passed my class in chemistry in high school as a senior because they came in and said, hey, these kids need to graduate. And the only thing they can take is chemistry because they've had all the easier classes and this is what they've got to take. And I said, but I don't teach stuff easy. It's going to be tough on them. And they passed with a 62.5 or something. And they got that diploma. And they're the ones hugging me in Walmart whenever I come down the road. I want to show you my kids. And the biggest pain in my neck when I was in the classroom. I want to show you my kids. I got 2 kids now, Mr. Coffman. You love me to death. I mean, thank you for being who you were. And all goes back to that management. They took a tough subject. They barely made it through. I don't think they knew any chemistry when they left. I think it's probably me being very courteous. But the fact was, they understood when they came in there that it was different than any other classroom. And yeah, it was tough. Yes, I had high expectations. And yes, I could be demanding for projects and work, but they also knew I cared about them and I loved on them and I let them feel that importance. And I think if we had more of that in our schools, we'd have better schools. And let's be real honest. How does our school look outside the doors? If a kid comes to class and he has 3 or 4 good teachers, what does he think of his school? Oh, that's a good school. Now, he might not want to get out of bed every day to go, but he thinks that's pretty good school. But if he has 2 or 3 crappy teachers, who knows he's got crappy teachers? He does, mom does, the neighbors do, Facebook does, you know, everybody knows. But we need to shoot for those 2 or 3 good teachers so that that's the influence. Because let's say the kid has 4 teachers a day. We know that some classes at 6, some, you know, I think it's really funny. We had the block scheduling for a while, you know, which looks ideal to me as a science person because, hey, I can teach an hour and a half. That's not a problem. But it was not wise for other people. But anyway, that, you know, that kind of fell apart. It was a big deal. Well, at the school I came from, they still have it. And it works well for them. But the fact is, when you look at the big picture, I can manage an hour and a half. Some people can't manage it. And I understand, but they need a good mentor. Right? They need you to mentor them. All right, so here's a couple of things. I'll give you an example. You need to not only teach and model expected behaviors in the classroom. This happens in that first few days. I'm telling you, I never gave my kids rules on day 1. We did an activity. I wanted to be the talk of the kitchen table that night. Mr. Coffman's class, he gave me this fish that tells the truth. You put this fish on your hand, it rolls up, and, you know, fortune teller fish. And I build this big story that this is the truth, man. This is thermodynamics. This is all these things going on. These kids are like, what's all that? But they took it home to try it on people at home. If you lying to me, put that in your hand. That thing rolls up a certain way. Oh, you don't be telling me no stories now. But that first day, we did activity. Guess what we did on day 2? An activity. Because I want them coming to science school. Because there's a lot of people walk into science class, and what do they think? Oh, Lord, I can't do science.
It's too hard.
It's too hard. But I had kids walking in my class on day 2. What are we doing today? And these are kids that you probably had to drag down the hallway just to get them in the building. But now they're coming to class and they're like, what are we doing today, Mr. Coffman? And so on day 2, we do a different activity. And on day 3, we do a different activity. And on day 4, I hand out my rules. And like I said, my rules got really short at the end because I'm like, look, I think I'm a pretty decent teacher. And I have this discussion with the class. I'm really good at what I do. I want you to come to class. I want you to learn. I want to enjoy this year with you. But guess what? We got to treat each other right. Respect each other. Don't interrupt people. You know, don't belittle people. And all I would say is, if you do that, that's okay. And then when Peyton would get in trouble and I come over to Peyton and I get on to Peyton, what am I asking her to do? Correct the behavior. I'm not asking her to write 50 sentences on the board or go to ISS. All I'm asking her is tomorrow, do you not do that? Because it took away from class. And now I gained respect. Because I didn't hammer in front of everybody. I just walked over and I talked to her and said, look, this is a situation. We want to get along in here. We want to have fun. We want to be able to do these things. There's certain little things that we do that we don't want to make a big point in front of everyone. And I try not to ever belittle anybody, call anybody down. Proximity is a big deal, right? You walk over to somebody, you get in their little space, they begin to take notice. Okay? So I put a couple examples up there, like respect others, don't say, don't be rude. I've seen that in the classroom. They have all these rules, don't be rude, don't talk back. Well, what are they going to want to do? All the don'ts. Because kids that are marginal, they're the ones that are looking at, oh, I get by. You know? So fewer to me is better. Because if you can make a general rule, if we say respect others, what does that cover? Everything. You know? Why do they say it's the golden rule? Do unto others, right? Why do they say it's the golden rule? Because if you did unto others what you want them to do to you, you wouldn't have any issues. And that's the same way in the classroom. Everybody treated each other like they wanted to be treated. And like I told you, they expect you to do 10 out of 10, but they also expect what? They expect to learn something even though they don't tell you. They give you a little kickback because they're like, I don't even be here. And then they end up learning something. I got to speed up, don't I think? Be consistent. I think consistency is key. And this is how you become, or that student thinks that you're the favorite, is you're consistent. So if I'm talking to Cindy and we talk, I'm just as kind to Cindy as I am to Peyton. And they both, maybe different personalities, but I never bring that up. Now, like I said, this was a learned behavior. This is not something that I walked out of Southwestern Oklahoma State University with the knowledge of. I did go to student teaching, and I did have an awesome mentor teacher in my student teaching. But it was in Duke, Oklahoma. Dr. Robert McCarty was my mentor teacher. There were classes, we had 3 kids. It's not real hard to manage 3 kids. But when I went to Hobart and had 32 in there, and we're all sitting at tables, I'm scared to death back up here at the front trying to lecture to someone. Because I was not very okay with that. It made me nervous. I talked to, I don't know, some of y'all may know Allison Goff. Allison Cheryl now is her name, but she's like a PT or assistant or occupational assistant. And I started the Rattlesnake Derby one year. She'd been out of school for 15 years. She comes up and hugs me, Mr. Coffman. She goes, "You're pretty green back." And I was like, "Yes, I agree." But I didn't have it all figured out. Taught 3 years there, got better every year. Went to Choctaw. Had this awesome mentor teacher, and I was ready to quit teaching. Literally. My classroom was not terrible. Kids behaved, but it was just real structured and lecturing. And I wasn't having fun. And so I was really ready to give up public ed. And I had this mentor that came in one day and he goes, "All right, kids really like it." He goes, "I don't want you to quit teaching," but he said, "You're going to have to change something." I said, okay, what's that? And he goes, we're going to an inquiry-based training. And we're going to take our science classrooms here at the junior high, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, and manipulate it into an inquiry-based everyday activity. Okay, that's kind of strange because I'm not used to that. But it took me back to Mangum, Oklahoma in the 9th grade with Mr. Harden. Because he would throw out an activity every day and you got to go solve the problem. And so Mr. Hall, which was my mentor, was awesome. He was an excellent teacher. He was one that would live in the fray, though, like right on the edge of being, is this okay or not? I mean, neighbor teacher comes over and she's throwing a fit because his class is too loud. So he has this snake in his classroom and he holds it up to the door and walks in and bites her right on it. She stuck her head in the door and yell at him. And wow, I mean, we're right on the edge. But you couldn't let him go because he's so awesome. The kids love him and they learn so much and they stay motivated. And so he was my mentor. And he was a great mentor because he got me involved in inquiry-based science, having fun. Kids enjoyed going to my class then. I'm telling you, we did a lot of cool stuff. I'll tell you. Gotta move on. We've talked about this, positive relationships. You know, you have to be relatable to the kids. The kids are going to be relatable because you're the adult, but you have to be relatable to them. Because we all know that when you sit in a classroom, whether it's a elementary, middle school, high school, college classroom, there's people in that room that are uncomfortable. They don't know what's coming next. Now, most of you probably weren't today because you all know me. But if you were sitting in a classroom that you didn't know the person, you may be uncomfortable. But that's where you start building those positive relationships. You start talking to people. You start getting to know them a little bit. They start sharing with you. You show some empathy towards them. You know, I had a kid that in high school here, and I'm sure I had that problem in other areas, but it was masked by something. But he worked at Taco Bell. He's in my chemistry class. He had to have this class to graduate. He worked at Taco Bell, but guess what? He didn't get off till 2 or 2:30 in the morning when they finally got Taco Bell closed down, and his family needed the money. So he would come to my class and he'd be totally exhausted. Head down, sleep. You go over and tap him on the shoulder. You okay? I'd give him what his assignment was. He'd come in after school before he'd have to go to Taco Bell. We'd work on the assignment. But in class, he was tapped out because he was exhausted. But you had to have empathy for him because my dad's father died when he was 15, and my dad went to work. And this was in the 1930s and 40s. And my widowed grandmother was no longer in the echelon of town at all. Like, now you're a widow. And now that you're a widow, your son's going to have to go out and work because women weren't working outside the home much. So my dad went to high school. Every day at 5:30 when he got out of football practice, he went to the light plant at Mangum. And he serviced all the generators for the light plant. And at midnight, when he shut the light plant down, the lights stayed on in town, but he had everything serviced, all the oil in them, all that checked. He'd walk back home, midnight, get up the next morning, go 6:30, first out of football practice, 6:30 in the morning. Must have done him right. He lived at 97. So he was a hardworking dude, hardest working guy. It'll make me emotional if I talk about it, because he's a hardest working guy. But build rapport with your students, positive relationships. Have some empathy on them. Because look, you know, what do they tell you? Everybody you run into has got a problem. And you don't know how deep the problem is. And I'm really figuring this out downtown working with adults. That, oh my gosh, I was so blessed in public ed that these kids mask that so well. They come in the classroom. I didn't know those kids came from some of these houses. And they mask it so well because they're around their friends and they don't let anybody know. They haven't eaten in 3 days. You know, I mean, so have that empathy that you need. I think that's really awesome in the classroom, and it helps you with your management because then they know you care. And you know, the old cliche, you know, people don't, you know, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, which is true. But for kids, I think it's even doubly true. The kids really want that connection. And you might be the only connection that they have. They may not have a connection at home. Home may be terrible, a terrible situation. And you might be the piece that whenever you're standing next to them, getting on to them in the day, but you're not yelling at them, you're saying, look, can we change this behavior? Because really that's all I want. I don't care about giving you 50 sentences, to write or going to ISS or sitting in the hall. I don't care about that. I just want the behavior change. They know you care a little more about it. And so you make that interconnection. And it makes your life a little easier in the classroom. Engaging instruction, you gotta keep their focus. You gotta keep them active, engaged in what's going on. And this all has to do with, somebody have to remind me of time. I probably talk too, ramble too much. No, I gotta leave it. Okay. Engaging instruction, it was easy for me because science is fun to me. That's what I do. I'm a scientist. I love that science. Math, you're a math teacher, bless your heart, But you can make it fun because I've seen some cool math teachers. And I know Miss Allen's been to tons of professional development, and she's probably seen Todd Whitaker, 50 times, and he's awesome, but he'll always tell you it's people, not programs. Because the person is who makes it. The person's the one that makes it entertaining. I can go into Miss Bailey's classroom and learn math, and I'm going to learn math. And she loves doing what she does. Because that's her thing. Science was my thing. And I just loved it. I just didn't, and so I think the kids were engaged. Yeah, you get bored sometimes because there's certain mundane things you got to do. When I started teaching environmental science, I loved it because you changed every 3 weeks, change topics. And that was so exciting because, man, we can go about this deep in anything. We don't have to go this deep. We just got to go this deep. And it was so exciting to do that because kids can say, if they didn't like a particular subject, guess what? 2 more weeks and we're done with that. We can move on to something else. And then I think this right here, the better you get at it, the more proactive you can be. If you think that Johnny's fixing to talk out and be disruptive because something's going on and it probably had nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your class, you walk yourself right over there and you start teaching class from right there. Because then that proximity again, you are preventing. They say preventive maintenance. This is prevented, the proactive strategy that's preventative. So what does that help with? Anticipate your problems, but also the more routines that you have in classroom, the more normal things kids feel in classroom. So a routine, and you have certain transitions, like who do mind traps in my class? Okay, Mind Trap was a game for years, sold on the internet, whatever. But it has little riddles, and every day I put a riddle on the board. Okay, so the kids would walk in the classroom, we talk. The riddle's on the board. What am I doing? Well, I'm doing all that stuff they don't need to know about. Finishing out an email because somebody emailed me that some kid was gone today, and I need to send the lesson home. Kids do the mind trap. On Friday we go over the answers. They write their answers down. On Friday we go over them. I know Ms. Farouk probably doesn't want to know this, but it's one of those things where with OSSAA, you always had to have 2 grades a week. Well, it's guaranteed 1 right there. Every week the kids had a good grade if they just did it. Now, I wasn't that easy a teacher. There was a lot of tough stuff in there. But the point was, right off the bat, they really did have an opportunity at a good grade that week. And so that puts their mind at ease because it's a routine. They come in. And then when I would forget and not put one up there and go, where's the mind trap? I need to put it on overhead. Where's the mind trap? And they'd be finding it and putting it up there for you to put on overhead because it's a routine. They're used to it. And then your classroom layout. I've had it all. I love this. This is pretty cool. 6-foot tables with 4 people sitting down. 6-foot tables with 3 people sitting around, and they're elbowing each other, and they can't stand in it because we didn't have any other room. We were all crammed in here. I was in the box car where the offices are now, up there at the high school, and I call it the box car because it was the old stage back in like 1928. And so it's this long room. It's about this wide, and you had 8 science tables in there. And so you walk like this. So everybody had to get out of the room. You had to sway back and forth just to get through. And if there was an emergency on the other end, you just have to wait it in. Hey, somebody take care of that, because getting there fast was not happening. Great room though, because you were away from everybody, nobody bothered you. I mean, you were all back in that little cubby hole. Some of y'all remember where it was at. It had that little ramp that went up. Yep. And there was holes in the floor. You could see the basement. And the kids would be over there and they'd look down there and they'd shine the light down and see if they could see crawl around the basement. But, you know, physical layout of where you're at is important because you need to set the room up that is useful to the teacher and to their class, not to the school. Because some people dictate that they want 4 rows of chairs, they want them 5 wide in every room. It doesn't work in every room. And we don't want to take away the autonomy of the teacher that is knocking it out of the park. And they do things their own way, but they're still good at what they do. And it's just different than what other people are accustomed to. Okay, so my classroom was few rules, respectful. I didn't sit at my desk very often. I'd up moving around. We didn't do a science experiment every day, but we did a lot of science experiments. But hopefully we did a lot of learning. And it's funny because I have kids call me from Choctaw because one of the things we did there was, and you don't really have this ability here, I don't think, in the settings that most of your schools are. The middle school, they might. That outside, we built a garden for our classroom. And I tell people this, and they're like, you did this with 8th grade kids? I'm like, yeah, we built a garden. Every 2 people had a meter by meter plot of space. They got to grow whatever they wanted, legal, of course, because nowadays it wasn't a new thing back then either, because they would kind of want to push the limits. But they grew this, and so we masked everything before they started. They grew through the spring because everybody wants to be outside in the spring. We're learning outside in the spring. And at the end of school, we pulled all their stuff up, dehydrated it, burned it, and they calculated how many calories they had gained from the sun in that time. And yes, I did this with 8th grade kids, and they ate it up. And you'd be amazed at how many kids call me today, 35 years old, and go, got my garden in today, Mr. Coffman. Planted those flowers out front. Get pictures of people still to this day, and I haven't been there in 18 years. But I still get pictures from those people, you know, or they'll send me something on Facebook. Remember when we did this out there? I just got my kids outside doing that at home. Those are management tools. That's connectivity. You know, that's that interaction and that relationships that you build. I gave a kid, and I know this is not everyone, but I gave a kid a Dave Ramsey book. You know, I'm a big Dave Ramsey person. And 2004, we had Aubrey, and we just moved into a brand new house. And I mean, we built my dream house. And Tara will be, if she walked in, she'd say, yes, that was his dream house. So we built it in the middle of town in Midwest City on 9 acres. You can't find that now. There's nowhere. I built it in the middle of the block, so there's houses all around the outside skirts of it, and then my fence is their backyard, all the way around our property. So 9 acres, 5 acres is woods, 5 acres is pasture. Built my house, turned it 27 degrees so that no sunlight in the summertime would ever come through any windows.
Only me, girl.
That's what I did. And my kids made fun of me at school because I went out and on the summer solstice, I marked where the sun was. I went out and measured it. And then on the equinox, I measured it because I wanted to know how far south is the sun going to be. And so I built it, and it was 27 degrees off of south. In the wintertime, south-facing windows all got sunshine. We had passive solar energy always in the house. The house was always warm on that side. So we built this house. So this is one of my students, and you probably had these too. And I think it all goes back to classroom management. He was a broke arm boy to my wife because when we got him, he was in wrestling and he broke his arm. So in golf, I was coaching golf and he was on my golf team. And I said, man, we're going to the concession stand at ball games. You need to come. So Kyle comes. She always calls him broke arm boy because he had a broke arm the whole time that we were working in the concession stand. Okay, so Kyle, great student, know his family. Graduates high school, I give him a book, Ramsey's book, Total Money Makeover. And I said, you know, you're probably not ready for this book now, but one day you may. So we keep in contact. He's storm chases too, because he's kind of a passive meteorologist. But he calls me about 6 years ago, and he's fixing to get married. I'm like, that's cool. And he goes, I want you to come to the wedding. Okay, that's cool. I'll be there. It was at the zoo, some sort of big deal they have at the zoo, and so we went there. And he said, I just need to tell you something, Coach. And I'm like, okay, what's that? He goes, well, you know that book you gave me? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, I took it to heart. The school got a degree, bought a swimming pool company, worked my tail off for a while, sold my swimming pool company for millions of dollars. And he goes, I touch people that you'll never meet, but because you gave me that book, it's made a world of difference in their lives. He goes, you'll never meet them because it's philanthropy that I've given people here or there, whatever. But that's the kind of impact, and that was something that I just, as a gesture, gave to him. Not thinking that I would ever get anything back out of it, not wanting anything back out of it, but it grew fruit. And now he's a continual difference. I mean, he teaches people about how to manage their money, teaches people about how to invest. And he's a firefighter. He wanted to be a highway patrolman, and that didn't work out. I don't know, a few years back, I don't know the patrol situation, but the city, there was a big uproar where they had a lot of administrative changes. Well, the guys that had signed off on all his paperwork were the ones that got tossed. And so he kind of got tossed. So he goes, well, I'll go to firefighting. So he went to, so he's a little firefighter. He's got an older brother who was in my class. He builds homes in Oak Tree. I mean, these kids, they've made it now. But it was all of that connection. Now, they had to have their own fortitude, right? They had to go out and do it. But it was a seed that got planted that I didn't even know I was planting. And so when I preach at church, that's one of the things that I want you to understand. Whenever I do preach at church, my point is you're going to change someone's life that you may never see the fruits of, but we do it anyway because we're teachers. And teachers matter. And so on the screen up here, Harry Wong's classroom management book. You've seen the first days of school or whatever that Harry Wong had for years. He and his wife both, I think, passed away now. But his kids have kind of carried on that. But they have a new book that came out a few years back, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it talks about classroom management. If you have young teachers at your school, I would encourage getting in that book because it makes a big difference in people's interaction and how they go about. We have tons of new teachers. A lot of my kids that I had in class are now teachers at the high school or junior high or whatever. And I think they need, if they haven't gone through student teaching, for sure, they need help. And I don't know how many of y'all, did everybody in here have to go through student teaching a long time? Besides you, because you're food therapist, right? So I went through student teaching. It made a world of difference because you saw somebody else do it in front of you. And if you don't go through student teaching, guess what? Your last example is your last example that you had in high school. And if they weren't a good mentor, it's not a good example to carry over. Anyway, this book, it's an awesome book, and I just picked it up the other day whenever I knew I was going to teach this section, and I picked it up because I have the first days of school. I've had like 19 different versions of it or whatever. But this right here, we've all heard this, right? 100 years from now, it will not matter what kind of car you drive, what kind of house you lived in, how much money I had in the bank, what my clothes look like, but it will matter because if you left the place better because you, not just your own kids, but you guys get to be, like, I think it's awesome. We'll get to be examples for other people's kids. And those other people might not be the great example. And so we become the one the kid trusts, the mentor, the one they lean on. All right, so my key points today, respect is crucial. You got to learn, that's a big thing today. If they disrespected me, and they get mad about stuff. Respect is crucial. Every student should feel that they're the favorite in your classroom. Never yell. Not a place for it in school. Never use sarcasm. Never argue with a student. You will not win an argument with a student. Because if they have their buddies around, and you start arguing, That's when we have problems, because you're not going to win it. And then students deserve 10 out of 10 days from you. Treat everyone as if they're good, even though you may know that they may be a turkey. Treat them like they're good. Some of that will wear off. Negative people have no power till you give it to them. You empower negative people. Powder, this is a Todd Whitaker thing. Powders pout and whiners whine because it works. You need to self-reflect, be a continual learner like I've been. Went to Alabama and got a degree in sports management and administration because I was doing that at the time. And so I'm a continual learner. My wife, I tried to get her to let me go to law school, and she said no. Seriously, but she said no. We have one in OU. Aubrey's an OU senior this year, so she's studying archaeology. Go figure. That's a scientist, right? So stay positive. Least important person in the room is the one causing problems. Don't spend all your time on the least important person. Spend it on all those that are tuned into you. And then don't be average. Invest in your future and in yourself, because my mother would say don't be average, because average means you're crap of the cream and cream of the crap. That's what she taught us. And she was a sharecropper's daughter. They churned their own milk. And that's exactly what I was told since I was about 4 years old. Don't be average, because that's average. So I hope you gained something from today. I hope I didn't bore you. I hope we, I had no idea I was going to know just about 98%. But anyway, I think it's lunchtime, right? And if there's anything that I can do for you, I'll put my number up there now. It's changed a little bit. You can still get me through school or the school email, because I coach golf in the spring for Dusty at the high school. If you need a reading list, here's a reading list. Go take a picture of that. There's some really cool books up there on that. There's one right now that I'm about 3/4 of the way finished through, and that's the very top one, The Next Conversation with Jefferson Fisher. And he talks about conflict resolution. We're going to talk about communication this afternoon. It's my secondary topic. And I'm going to talk about how you diffuse situations, because that's one thing with the people that I'm training now to go work. How do you diffuse that so you don't get mad and quit? Because everybody feels disrespected. They just want to quit. Well, guess what? You're starting over when you quit. And it took us 6 weeks to find this job. What's it going to cost? What's it going to take the next time? Because next time you've got to go say, well, I was only there for 18 days and I got mad and quit. But this is a good book list, I think. Does everybody get it that wants it? Couple of others. Dealing with Difficult Parents, of course, Todd Whitaker. He's one of my school hero guys. John Gordon, The Energy Bus. Some of you read The Energy Bus. You need to if you haven't. There's the Energy Bus for schools now. There's a new version of it that's for schools. My dream job right now is to go train and be a John Gordon speaker, to go public speaking for John Gordon's team. Brene Brown, I don't know if any of you know her from TikTok and all that stuff. That book, Imperfections, is an awesome book because it tells us that we're not perfect and be okay with it. Dale Carnegie's my grandma's book up there. My grandma took the Dale Carnegie course in 1939. How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it was on a record. So anyway, Classroom Management by Harry Wong. Here's my contact. This is at WRO downtown, but you can still get to me if you have the school email. I'm still on the school email because like I said, I coach golf in the spring. And but hopefully this went well with you. I really enjoy doing this. This is what I like to do. And I try not to toot my own horn too much. But the fact is, I think God blessed me with the ability to gab. And hopefully it's meaningful. Meaningful to me. I tell people whenever I preach at church, sometimes I said, I don't even remember what I said. The Holy Spirit better be working on it because I don't even remember what I said. Don't come up and say something. That was pretty good. So you must have heard what you're supposed to hear. And I hope that's the case for you today, because everybody in here is in a different spot. And hopefully you heard what you needed to hear. And I know most of you guys are outside the classroom, but as counselors and admin, you are impactful to those other people. And if you can share, it's just like I told Draven Wyberry the other day, and I've tried to get him to come talk to me because he's like, man, this science stuff, the high school, it's tough. And I'm like, come talk to me. I did it for 35 years. I think I can help. And but he's scared of me. How's he scared of me? He's bigger than I am. You know? That's what he tells me, because when I was in your class, I was petrified because you were scared. I'm like, wait a minute, you're big kid. But anyway, you guys have a great day. If you come back for communication in the afternoon, it will be different. We'll talk about some other things, but appreciate you being here.